welcome to Life Experiences with William Pelarenos. And I am your host, and we have a returning guest here. Her name is Debbie Cohen. She's a family law attorney who's been here for 3 episodes. Debbie, thank you for coming back.
Thank you again for having me. Again, always excited to be here.
And her current practice is a private attorney's family law, which covers divorce, child custody, child support, orders of protection. We've discussed this on our previous episodes, which are archived on YouTube, correct, Matthew?
YouTube.com at WRMN Radio, yes.
YouTube.com at WRMN Radio. So those episodes are archived, and you have them archived and a link on your website, which is?
CohenFamilyLawyer.com.
Okay, so you could watch those past episodes.
Yeah.
But today, I didn't want to get into that family law, but it turns out that some of our listeners heard me say that Debbie Cohen was previously a prosecutor, and I ran into her in the halls of the Maywood Courthouse, and she was all down at 321 North LaSalle before that building was sold, and those cases of traffic cases went to the Daily Center. So she's going to tell us some interesting stories that she ran into or is aware of during her prosecuting days.
Okay, this is my passion. I loved being a state's attorney. It was just so much, it was fun, and it was such an amazing career. But when I first started...
You were in traffic court.
I was in traffic court, so I wanted to talk about a lot of the traffic court tickets at that time were either high speeders. They were what's called 6303s, driving on suspended driver's licenses. That's the code for it, or DUIs, and a lot of DUIs. And I know you and I share that because you're a DUI expert instructor, and I love swapping stories with you because it's so much fun to talk about all of it. But I had some crazy stories when I was a prosecutor, and I'll start with some of the high speeders. People would come up with the craziest excuses for why they were speeding, which were so unbelievable, and nobody would believe them. And there was a case once where one person said that they had to get to the airport to pick somebody up, and the excuse was to pick them up. And then I asked where were they going to go after they picked them up, and why were they, rushing to get there and going, I think it was like 95 miles an hour. They just said they just wanted to be there, and that was the crazy part. They wanted to be there a half hour early. So it wasn't even that the person had arrived at the airport. They just allegedly wanted to be there early. But people could come up with the lamest excuses. Of course, in situations, there are reasons if you have to speed, but these high speeders, usually they're just crazy stories. What about you, Bill? Did you have, I know with DUIs and everything else, what kind of stories do you have?
Well, real quickly, for speeding cases, the airport ones are very common. I'm going to the airport, and when I needed, and I always gave them a 15-mile-an-hour berth. So if the speed limit was 55, I didn't stop them till over 70. I didn't get low speeders. I made sure they were, because if you're going after these low speeders, you're going to miss the ones that are flying. So the airport's very common, because back in the day when I was a policeman, not anymore, but they used to take the driver's license. And people used to tell me, oh, I got to fly Friday. I'm flying. I need the license.
Yeah.
Well, I said you could go get a state ID. Folks, if you're going to get your driver's license, make sure you pay the extra $10 and get a state ID. It comes in very handy. But that was a big excuse. I got to go. I'm flying out of the airport. I'm going to the airport. Also, another one was, I got to go to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, I'm diabetic. I know I got to go to the bathroom, too. But there's no reason to be doing 90 miles an hour. So that was a big common excuse. And one guy that I never forgot, I had to make a U-turn because I had moving radar coming the other way. He passed 3 gas stations. So when he tells me I had to go to the bathroom, I said, man, you passed 3 gas stations. Oh, I can't use their bathrooms. I have to do it at home. So yes, they do use those crazy excuses. But let's go with DUIs. Some DUI cases you prosecuted?
Oh yeah. I prosecuted and was criminal defense. Some of the crazy DUIs. There was one that, and you know what? I'm having a blank right now, and I apologize.
What?
I'm having a blank right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But I'll tell you a quick one. This has happened to me and this happened to other policemen. Drunk drivers stop at a red light with their foot on the brake and they're asleep and traffic going around them. And I remember one on First Avenue in Maywood, and he was stopping and he knocked on the window. He was still asleep with his foot on the brake. So I had to open the door and shift it from drive to park, and the whole car rocked when I did that. And I dropped it. And my partner arrested him because he came along. I pulled him out of the car. We did field sobrieties. We left. My partner took him, arrested him, and I went on my way. But what happened is, at court, I walked in to testify against him, and I was on the report, and the lawyer read the report, and this guy says he swore up and down that I was not at the scene. I go, man, I'm the one that put the car in park. He was so drunk he couldn't remember me. I said, my man, if you can't remember a 300-pound policeman, forget it. The lawyer pled him guilty.
The lawyer, yeah, no, and no, I have so many DUI stories. So excuse my little break there, but long and short of it, I prosecuted so many DUIs. One of my favorite DUIs that I prosecuted was there was a man who was claiming that he had a hearing deficiency and could not hear the officer. However, there was video of the entire arrest, the entire scene with doing field sobriety test. And in the video, you see the officer walking in front of this man with his back to the man. And the officer is giving instructions. So long and short of it, the officer's in front of the man, his back is to him, but the man followed the instructions that the officer gave while not even being able to see the officer's mouth. So when he claimed that he had his hearing, that he wasn't following instructions, there was really, it came into play, and it was not an easy case because you don't want to disqualify somebody if they have a hearing impairment, but he was exaggerating and lying about something he had no evidence of. He had no documentation from anywhere, and he was just using it as an excuse.
There's always an excuse. Somebody's got an excuse. But the lawyers sometimes find those excuses so ridiculous, they really don't want to embarrass themselves in a court of law or even putting this guy in the stand. Like if they would have put this guy in the stand saying, I was not there, he would have gone down the toilet anyways.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, so no, and then I have, where I've been on both prosecution and defense, where I've had, while I was doing defense, I would have one of my clients who was a repeat offender on DUI. The worst thing was that she called me while she was on the video recording being arrested and, was saying, what do I do? And it's a difficult situation.
When you were a private attorney.
When I was a private attorney, I apologize. Yes. Not a prosecutor. God, no.
We've had that.
Yeah.
We've had that. People, a secretary to a lawyer called the lawyer and she wouldn't get out of the car. Cell phones, when they came in, there's a positive and negative to them. But the negative is these people call other people. And I've had it where they call other policemen, other police departments. Here, he wants to talk to this lieutenant. Hey, my lieutenant, what do I want to talk to? And you don't know who you're talking to on the phone.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
No. And so, yeah. So, but other stuff that I did as a prosecutor, and stuff that comes into play right now with what I do, I was in domestic battery court and orders of protection. So those were some crazy stories. And we had a woman that would come in, and this is when I was in the Maywood courthouse, and she would be in there almost every month with a new charge against her boyfriend. But she would come in and she would have a black eye, or she would come in and have some other sort of injury to her. And every time she came in, she would dismiss the charge too. She did not want to testify. And at that time, it was heartbreaking. But there's a lot of cases where the people are just abusing one another, coming into court, using the court as improperly. A lot of times using the court improperly for things, and going from there.
I've heard that recently, it was actually last year, of a case where it was similar to that. The woman kept filing complaints against her ex-boyfriend or whatever the relationship was. But what made this case unique is the state actually subpoenaed the victim to come to court, and because she's the victim, not the defendant, she cannot plead the fifth. She has to testify, correct?
Correct. And now, so I'm going back years before the new policies are in effect. Now the state can prosecute even without the victim coming to court, but the state does subpoena the victim to come to court to testify. And if the person tells a different version or anything like that, there can be consequences. But sometimes it's it's very difficult to prosecute cases when you have a victim that does not want to proceed.
Yes, but in that case, the reason I believe the defense attorney had these documents where, hey, my client is getting these complaints. He's got to take off work to come to court to address these. She's not here. The case gets dropped. It has to end. So the state wanted her to get her under oath and on the record and to resolve the thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's it. And depending on if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, you could do grand jury.
Hey, tell our listeners the difference between misdemeanors and felonies.
Absolutely. A misdemeanor is a criminal offense that's punishable by up to a year in jail. And if there's a crime that carries any sort of sentence for over a year in jail, that now is considered a felony. And so felonies are much more serious than misdemeanors. And misdemeanors, depending on what kind of sentence you receive with a misdemeanor, you could also possibly expunge a case and rid it differently. But the misdemeanors are less serious offenses.
Yes, and with the felonies, once you're convicted, even though you may be entitled to felony probation, means you don't do no prison time, you're still a convicted felon, correct?
You're a convicted felon, and it stays on your record. And there's very few exceptions when a felony could, there's certain types of drug probations that can be possibly expunged. But typically, almost any felony, if you are convicted of it, even like you said, with just probation, even that you don't go to jail, it will still be on your record and you will be a convicted felon.
And the thing with convicted felons, they lose a lot of rights. And one of them I'll touch on because we're short on time here, is the fact that you can never own a firearm in any state, or you cannot possess a firearm, or you can't possess ammunition. Because I have charged, put felonies on convicted felons that had ammo packs on them, even though they didn't have the weapon. So I charge them with no FOID card and felony possession, UUW of possession of ammunition. So I know that being a convicted felon, you lose a lot more rights. I just, off the top of my head, we'll do a felony show one day.
Absolutely.
But that's one of the downsides. So you handled a woman that killed her daughter somehow, right?
Yes, it was a crazy case. So I was a baby state's attorney at the time, and I had just relocated or had been transferred from traffic court in the city to the Maywood courthouse. And one of the first chair prosecutors was prosecuting a woman that murdered her baby, and I got to what's called second chair it. So I got to handle and prosecute the case. And it was a devastating story, and the facts were absolutely insane. The woman that was being accused, I'll just call her the defendant, she had a baby, and let me rephrase it. She was on America's Most Wanted, and because she had been accused of killing a baby, and the whole scenario was that she hid a pregnancy from everybody, including her mother, including her boyfriend. It's the craziest set of facts, and had a baby, and had this baby in her bathroom where she herself gave birth to the baby and did everything. And for the next 3 months, the baby remained alive. And she would tell people if she was walking around with the baby that it was her cousin's baby. And ultimately, what happened was she lived in a rental building, and the neighbors were complaining about a smell coming from the unit. And when the landlord came and was investigating it and went into the unit, he found a bassinet and pulled the blanket over, and it was the decomposed body of the baby. So she literally had this baby sitting in her unit, just decomposing. When the police arrested her, they originally, when they spoke to her, were talking to her and did not read her Miranda, because she claimed that it was her cousin's baby and didn't know anything. And for whatever reason, Miranda wasn't read. And the unfortunate part is she gave an entire, I'm sorry, and I'm messing it up. The first time she denied it and said it was her cousin's baby. The police came a second time to speak with her because they had more questions, because they couldn't find the cousin and they couldn't find anything. And at that time, they didn't read Miranda. And she gave an entire admission how she stopped feeding and nourishing and the baby. And it came down to, it was our expert against her expert. She had a very, very good attorney, a defense attorney. And because her admission was kept out, she was found not guilty. And it was what's called a bench trial, not a jury trial. So it was a judge. And it was a very smart decision on behalf of her attorney also to go with the judge, because he had to follow not the emotion of how grotesque this was and what she did, and knowing that she did it. He had to follow the law. And the law, there was nothing, the expert was not able to say beyond all reasonable doubt that the baby died of her failing to properly keep the child nourished, and that it was her fault.
You know what? There have been many similar cases, right, Matthew? Similars where women have given birth unknowns to other people, and they've disposed of the baby. That led to a change in the Illinois legislature. Now we have a law where if you have a child and you don't want it, you can drop it off at any fire department and any police department without any repercussions, no questions asked.
Absolutely. And so that is, and if somebody found themselves in this situation, absolutely, there's so many options, and you could just simply go have somebody, anonymously drop off the child, and but to have and make a human being suffer also like that is just heartbreaking.
And you know what? That when you talk about the confession with no Miranda rights, that comes back on. I used to be a policeman, and I was a detective for many years. And I also was assigned 2 years to the state's attorney's office at 26th and Cal. I did their investigations. But I was doing training, and I remember that issue came up. And my question, and my sergeant sitting there in the room complimented for me when we were talking about a similar case like this, where somebody starts blabbering about the crime they committed. So I said, my question was, at one point, did they go from becoming a witness to becoming a suspect?
Yeah.
If somebody just starts making statements against their penal interest, is that the term?
Correct.
If somebody just making statements against their penal interest, at some point you have to stop them. They become now a suspect in the case, read them their rights, and then if they want to continue, so be it. There's also been cases a late great detective used to tell this story when he used to teach the class with me. He called it elephants and oranges. And it was two totally unrelated. He walked into he was at the wrong apartment, and he used a sliding glass door to walk in. He thought it was a crime scene. But the offender was there. And he asked the guy, hey, is this apartment 1A or whatever it is? And the guy starts going, I didn't mean to do it. I hit him on the head because he's asking me about if this is the correct apartment. And this guy starts confessing.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And
Yeah. So when they make an outburst like that, it is admissible. And we got the last 4 minutes, and I happen to touch on this. Dying declarations, they're admissible in court, correct?
Correct. They are.
Explain what a dying declaration is.
A dying declaration is if while you're in the process of dying, let's say you were shot by somebody, you were a knife, anything, and you blurt out like, Joe Smith did this to me. And then that person that screamed it out died. They said during the process of dying is called a dying declaration, and that could be used in the criminal situation where you could use that admission to prosecute somebody, and that would be as good as evidence as any because it's taken as that it's exactly a valid testimony because the person's dying, and so it's not something.
That's taught in police academies under constitutional law.
Yeah.
I happened to touch on it with Matthew. So, so we're time flies when you're here with Debbie Cohen, attorney at law. And we'll give your website one more time. So we were talking about prosecuting cases. Let's talk about her defending you in a court of law in a family lawyer. Let's go to CohenFamilyLawyer.com.
Perfect. That is it. And I could be reached at area code 312-835-2996.
And a phone consultation is free with Debbie Cohen. Tell her your problems and she'll see if she can help you or not. Or maybe refer you to another attorney, right?
Absolutely. If I am unable to help and it's a different type of law or a different legal matter, I will find, some names and get you to somebody else.
Thanks for being here. We got a lot more topics to cover. I hope you come back again. Join us next week right here on WRMN 1410 AM for Life Experience with William Pelarenos. Follow me on Facebook at Pelarenos Police Project. That's on Facebook. Click on like and you'll follow me. I always post info about our shows. And I'm on Twitter, which is now known as X, at Police Project One. Follow me on Twitter. I always put important stuff on there too. Debbie Cohen, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Matthew.
Phil.
Of course.
Thank you, Matt.
You're very welcome.
See you guys on Friday afternoons, Life Experiences with William Pelarenos, 12:05 p.m. live from WRMN.
Yeah.